I remember seeing Oprah had Oprah.com. And I thought, how cool would it be to have your name, .com. Now, I sought this kid out. So I went to Brendon.com, and this guy, he had his resume up there. And that's all he had was a resume. So I emailed the guy, and I'm like, hey man, I'd really love to own this website. Could I buy it from you? He goes, no, it's my name. And he says, no, I got my mom, she's got email associated with the domain, all this stuff. I said, oh man, all right. So I set it in my calendar. Every 6 months for 6 years, my calendar would go off and I'd email him again. It took 6 years. And the 6th year, he said, you know what, yeah, I'd be interested in that conversation. Sold it, so I got Brendon.com. I'm really happy about that. Really stupid story, but I was like, yes, determination.
Most people don't get what they want because you don't follow through enough. You just don't follow through. It's based out of insecurity. You start and stop. You're afraid of hurting people's feelings. You're afraid of what they're gonna say about you. You're afraid they're gonna judge you. And we're afraid of having that L on our personal resume. And so we stop and try to do something else where we're seeing more immediate results. But if it's your goal, if it's your dream, you have to follow through. One of my favorite stories is with Brendon Burchard, and I went to speak at his event in Phoenix, and I knew of him, but I didn't know him at the time. It was his business partner that had me come out to his event and hired me to speak there, and that's where I met Brendon for the first time. And he asked me, hey, what are you working on? What can I help? What's next for you? And I said, I'm working on my book. And he said, I'd love to help. I'd love to give you some feedback on your book. Like, I am definitely down for that. Let's connect. And he asked me what my phone number was, and at the time I didn't have a phone. I didn't use a phone number. And I said, how about email? And he said, I'm not really good on email, but if that's the only way, then let's do email. So we exchanged emails, and I didn't hear from him, so I followed up and I said, hey Brendon, thank you, great event. Love to talk about the book like you suggested, and didn't hear back, and followed up a couple weeks later and didn't hear back, and followed up a couple weeks later, and then he said, oh man, thank you, I'm super swamped right now, but let's either come out to my place and we'll do a jam session, or I've got this event coming up, maybe you can come be there. I said, yeah, I'm down for either, which one do you want to do? And didn't hear back, and then wrote a couple more messages and didn't hear back. And here's what's really important. In my head, every time I sent another email, I was questioning myself. I was judging myself, like, ooh, I don't want to bother him. Maybe I'm being too overwhelming. Maybe he doesn't actually want me to come out. Maybe I'm offending him. Maybe I'm not respecting him. Maybe I'm asking for too much. That's the thought in my head before every email. Where in reality, he's just a busy guy. He had a lot of stuff going on. He had a launch that was happening that I wasn't even aware of, that he was planning behind the scenes. And so he was, not crazy stressed out, but he just has a lot on his plate that he's dealing with. And it's hard to tell ourselves that. It's easier to default to the insecurity of maybe you're bothering, maybe you're asking too much, maybe you're not worthy, maybe you should move on. The event that he talked about me coming to was coming up, and I still hadn't heard back whether he wanted me there or not, or and my book launch was coming up too. And I thought, I'm gonna send one more email. Just one more email, that's it. I'm gonna send one more email, and hopefully something happens. If not, then I'm done. And hopefully he doesn't think I'm a loser or whatever. And he wrote back an email and like, hey, sorry man, again, I'm not super great on email. I've just been swamped planning all these things. Yeah, come out to the event, speak at the event too. And that was his big event that was, $30,000 to $50,000 a year mastermind to be a part of, that then I spoke on stage. That then at the event, after I spoke, I met with him and Dean Graziosi backstage for an hour over lunch and planned my entire book strategy. That then led to me getting invited to go to Brendon's house a couple days later and hang with him and Dean and Tom Bilyeu and Lewis Howes and Jay Shetty and Russell Brunson and all sorts of amazing humans who built giant businesses. All of that happened because I sent that one more email. Because I followed up and I followed up and I followed up and I followed up, and it wasn't that he hated me or that he thought I sucked or that I was being overwhelming or whatever. That I kept following up. It just had the persistence. There's a lot of opportunities that are in front of you right now that just are not happening because there's not enough follow-up, there's not enough persistence. And the reasons why you're not doing it are based in reality, right? I mean, I could be overwhelming. It's possible. It's possible that he thinks that I'm overwhelming, that I'm not giving enough value, that I'm being too selfish, that I'm bothering him. I mean, it's possible, but we default to just assuming that instead of actually finding out, and we miss out on a lot of upside. And so here's what I found that really helps. 1, you schedule it in. You schedule it in every X number of weeks, right? So every 2 weeks, I would send in another email. Every 2 weeks, 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 every 2 weeks. And I never felt like doing it because every time I saw that in my task list, I didn't want to do it. Like, let's give it another few days. Let's give it another week. I never wanted to do it. But because it was in my calendar, I did it. You will never want to do it because you're afraid, right? Underneath it is really just fear. It's insecurity. You'll never want to do it. So you schedule it in every 2 weeks or every week or every month or whatever the thing is that makes sense for the timeline that you're on. You schedule it in so that you have to do it. So when it came up, I knew I had, even though I didn't want to, even though my heart was beating, I was like, I still went off and I did it. Second thing is, lead with the intention. Before you write the email, before you make the call, before you do the follow-up, like, what's the intention? Is your intention to screw this person over? Is your intention to just suck up their time? Is your intention to negotiate a bad deal for them? Hopefully not. If you're a subscriber to this channel, hopefully it's positivity and hope and belief and mutual, benefits. And so if you lead with that intention every time, it's really unlikely that they're going to come back in a really negative way. The truth of the matter is they're probably just really busy. Maybe they're doing something insane in their life. Maybe they have a health scare. Maybe they're in the hospital. Maybe their mom's in the hospital, right? Like, you never know what's going on behind the scenes. And if you lead with intention as opposed to a copy paste email or just some kind of spam, if you lead with, I love this person, I want to do something with them, I want to help, I want to learn. Like, if that's a positive intention going in, your call, your email, your follow-up will just be a lot better. It'll be a lot better, and people will feel it. I forget who it was. I want to say it was. No, I forget who it was. I'm thinking Princess Di, but I don't think it was her. I don't forget who it was. Where she would say, before I send an email, I would always smile. I would think about the person and I would smile before I wrote an email or wrote a letter. And it would always change the vibe of the letter, right? Like, if you're thinking love, kindness, smiling before you make a video, before you do a DM, before you do an email, right? Like, if you're thinking that, chances are you'll make them smile. Like, if you're smiling before you do it, you're probably going to make them smile. And so just taking that little pause to reflect on what is my intention here, instead of defaulting to insecurity and the stress on your side, default into, let's lead with positivity. Let's smile. Let's lead with love. You'd be amazed at how many great things happen. So those two things. 1, you put it in your calendar. Until you get a response. Like, if somebody says no, okay, at least you got a response. But again, it's likely going to be a loving no because you followed up so many times and you've always led with a positive intention and love and kindness. They might just say, I'm just, you know what, I can't do this right now, or I'm not interested, or hey, sorry, I haven't gotten back to you. Let's do this, right? A lot of times it's just the timing. A lot of times your timing is way off, and it's not your timing. It just doesn't fit into their life or their world right now. But in 2 weeks it might, or in 2 months it might, or in 2 years it might. And if you're following up every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, and you're leading with love and kindness and with a positive intent, amazing things will happen. You have a great mission inside you. You have a desire to serve and to help and to create great things for the people who you work with. Right? Like, that is at the core of who you are. And that needs to be spread. And at the beginning, when people don't know who you are, it's a little harder to get attention and get on people's radar. But if you are consistently following through, even in the face of not getting any response, you just consistently, because it's on your calendar, you're consistently following through, and you're leading with the intention of love, kindness, positivity, great things will happen. I promise you, great things will happen. Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
I remember when I was going to start my business, and I really wanted to be good at it. You know, I was trying to become an author and a speaker and do these types of videos and do some online training for people on the topics of motivation and marketing. And all these people were saying, well, Brendon, you may or may not be successful at that. You're, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, it's a weird thing. It's not like there's a trait of successful people. You look across history, and successful people, they're not from a given background. They don't come from a specific economic stature. They're not in a position where, they're one demographic or another demographic. I mean, it's all over. I mean, we've got thousands of collective years of history. People succeed, some people do, some people don't. And I think it more comes down to how do we manage our mind and how do we manage our days? And I think that there's a difference between successful people and unsuccessful people in the way they particularly think about approaching something new. I think unsuccessful people, when they have a big dream and they start thinking about what's going to be required to accomplish that dream, they get very limiting in their beliefs about themselves and what's possible. And specifically, they say 3 types of things. The first thing they often say is, well, I don't know how to do that. So they stop. They say, I don't have those things. So they stop. Or they say, I don't know, I'm not like those people. I'm not like that. And so they stop. But successful people have a different way. They have the same thing. Everybody dreams. You dream, I dream. Successful people dream. People just starting out. Everybody dreams. Everyone has a vision. Everyone, if they can just take 5 minutes today and think about their lives, we could all come up with ways to improve our lives and reach another level of success, joy, happiness, achievement, contribution, fulfillment, soul. We can all elevate. But the challenge is that the unsuccessful people, they keep stopping when they think of what they currently know, have, or are. But successful people say, well, I want to do that, but I don't know how to do that. But instead of stopping, they say, well, then my job is to go learn that. They take their current limitation and they put it on their agenda as a job to do, as a thing to figure out, a thing to make happen. Instead of saying, well, I don't have that, they say, well, then my job is to go build that. Or I'm not like that. Then they say, well, then my job is to go become more of that, become that person who could accomplish those things. When I was starting to do online marketing for the first time, and I don't know how much of my story you know, but when I started doing online marketing, I was literally bankrupt. And I went from a place of bankruptcy to the point where I really committed to becoming successful at it. And in 18 months, I'd made $4.8 million, 4.6 collected. I mean, it was just a huge leap, right, in difference from bankrupt to multimillionaire in a span of 18 months. But what made that breakthrough wasn't that I had new opportunities. It wasn't that I had new technologies. It wasn't like, wow, there's the internet now. Those things were already there. I went from this level of thinking to this level of thinking. I used to say, well, I don't know how to build a web page. So I said, agenda, figure out how to build a web page. And I spent hours and hours and hours at nights, on weekends from my job, figuring out how to do that. And I said, well, I don't have one of those lists. I don't have any subscribers. Nobody knows who I am. So I said, job, go build a list. Go get subscribers. Go add value and content out in the marketplace and they'll come. I mean, just keep putting stuff out there. And I also didn't say, oh my gosh, well, I have that dream. I can't have that because I'm not like that. because I wasn't a public speaker. I didn't know how to do video. I wasn't like, well, I'm not one of those video people. Well, I'm not a public speaker. So I said, you know what? I have to go learn that art. I have to go become a better speaker, a better communicator. I have to go become more confident. I have to go become a person capable of doing these things. I have to change myself to get there. I can't wait for circumstances to change so I can have my dream. Then our dreams would never happen. We have to get to the point of maturity in our lives where we say, okay, 2 things are gonna change my life. Something new is gonna come into my life and make me lucky and blessed, and maybe I can't count on that forever. And maybe now, instead, I have to consciously design my life and say, okay, now, if I want to change, if I want my dream, something new has to come from me. I'm going to become a better person. I'm going to become a person who is more optimistic, who is more confident, who is more driven. Not because I am that now, but because we can grow. That you can become the type of person who you need to be to achieve your ideal life. You can start today living from your highest ideals, your highest sense of self, your strongest sense of self. You don't need permission. You don't need a guy like me to look at the video camera and say, you have now permission. But if you've been waiting for it, you have permission. It's like at some point in your life, you just say, okay, I have permission to become my best self. And by becoming your best self, you start to achieve your best things. You start to contribute better things. You start to become a better human being. You can do that now, today. So next time you're thinking about a big dream, don't think about the things that, well, I don't know how to do that, and stop. Think, I don't know how. So set it up on your calendar to go learn those things. I don't have that, then set it up step by step to go build that. I'm not like that, then set it up step by step to go develop those skill sets and those competencies so you can become that, and ultimately you can achieve that dream. It's there, it's waiting for you. Don't stop. Now, I know you all have big goals, big dreams, big aspirations, just like I do. You've got ambitions to become an amazing person, to build your career, to create, to contribute, to give, to be an awesome human being. But all of that is impossible without great habits set up. If you don't have routine and structure set up in a way that will keep you on track, then you'll fall off. And having new goals without new habits is kind of like, having a new car without wheels. The habits are the wheels. They're the things that make you able to achieve the goals. So you gotta have good habits. But the challenge for most people isn't that knowledge. I mean, you need to have good habits. It's you can't keep the habit going, right? Have you ever started at the new year, you're gonna get healthier, and you start that habit of working out on a more regular basis, and then it goes away? Or you say, I'm gonna be more kind and more patient and more awesome to my partner, my lover, and you start being nice for 2 or 3 days, and then on the 4th day, you're a jerk, and you're like, what happened? I said I was gonna be nicer. It's that you didn't set up the most important thing you needed to maintain a habit. So what's the biggest secret I've learned in almost 20 years in this field? It's so simple, but most people don't have it. It's called trigger moments. You have to set up trigger moments to activate your habits. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say you want to become a better person. You want to become more kind, more patient, more loving with people. Now, you can just set that intention or write that down in your vision, or your journal, or set up on a vision board that you look at once in a while. But in day-to-day life, it's not enough. You need things to trigger you, to remind you to be that particular kind of person, right? It's almost like if you could have a little angel speaking in your ear all day long to tell you what to do and how to be, you'd obviously become better. Well, that makes sense. Well, let's use that idea. Let's use that idea by setting up alarms on our phones that trigger us to do the very things we need to do. This is gonna be so basic, you're gonna laugh, and then I'll also tell you how I've literally taught this to Fortune 50 CEOs, and they said it was the one thing that changed their life the most dramatically. So let's start with this. Let's have a goal in mind. Let's say you want to become more present and calm throughout the day. Again, you could write that down on a journal. I'm gonna be more present and calm. You could meditate in the morning saying, today, I'm gonna be more present and calm. And you could start out with good intentions, but those fall apart without a trigger moment set up throughout the day to remind you that. So what if you did this? What if you just set up on your phone 3 alarms during the day with a label that said, close your eyes, take 10 deep breaths in, remind yourself to be calm.
So let's say you're going through your day, it's crazy, right? It's 10 a.m. and all of a sudden, bing, your phone goes off. You look down and it says, close your eyes, take 10 deep breaths. And then again, it happens at 2 o'clock. And again, it happens at 6 p.m. And again, it happens at 8 p.m. What's gonna happen? You always look at your phone, don't you? It's gonna go throughout the day. You're gonna forget. And the funniest thing is, I've had so many people do this worldwide. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people I've taught to do this. Hundreds of thousands. And they tell me all the time, that changed everything. And you'll think, once you set it up, that the next day, you'll forget about it. No, that alarm will go off. You forgot you set the dang alarm. There it goes off in your face, and you're like, all right, I'm trying to be calmer and more present. Close my eyes, take 10 deep breaths, reground myself, here we go. You can't do it once a day. You have to have moments throughout the day that trigger you to enact the new behavior. I know this makes sense to you, but it's a challenge for a lot of people because they never set those things up. So what if you did it with an alarm? So for example, for me on the opposite spectrum, I don't want to just be calmer and more present. I want more energy throughout the day. So here's what I do. One of my big trigger moments is every time my butt hits a chair, I don't care if I'm on a plane or I was like where we're shooting here, I wrote a lot of my books here. I wrote the Motivation Manifesto here. I wrote The Charge here. And if I'm going to write, my butt hits the chair, I grab my phone, I open the timer, and I set 50 minutes. Now at 50 minutes, the timer goes, bzzz, it starts buzzing, and I look at that and I go, oh, that's my trigger to get energy. So I stand up, I go get some water, I take a glass of water, drink it down, I do some stretches, and I do some exercise just really briefly, or I'll go for a walk, whatever it is, but I'll do something that usually takes just 2 to 5 minutes. Then I'll sit back down, I'll set that 50-minute alarm, and I'll work. And what that does is every 50 minutes, it triggers me to change how I'm physically moving. It changes my attention so that throughout the day, I'm continually refreshed. So I never have that 2, 3, 4 o'clock time where I'm like, you know? Why? Because I've triggered my day so that my energy is maintained throughout the day. Makes sense, right? This could be as simple as, let's say you want to be healthier in your life. Okay, let's set up some trigger moments for you in this way. Let's say every time you drop off the kids, on the way back to the house, you stop at the grocery store and get some fresh produce. That's just a trigger. It's like, okay, did one thing, drop kids off. Now, tied to that, triggered from that action, drop kids off, is go to health food store. Or let's say you want to get healthier in the morning. One of the easiest ways to help people maintain a better exercise program is this. Set a trigger, you wake up in the morning, your first action is to drink water, put your exercise shoes on, might get dressed if you were naked, just saying. So you get dressed, put your shoes on, you go downstairs or you go to the gym, and that's the trigger. You woke up, you do these actions. Nothing interrupts those actions, that's the action. And you have to have those set up. One of my other favorite trigger moments to set up is door frame triggers. What do you mean by that? When you walk into a new room, to have a psychological trigger go off in your mind that you've associated with that door frame. So let me give you an example. If I walk into my house at night, if I've been working all day and I'm gonna walk in, I'm gonna see my lady, I have it so when I ever walk through the doors of my house, 3 words repeat off immediately in my mind because I've done it so many times consciously. I went to the door, I said the 3 words, said the 3 words, said the 3 words, and I did this so many times that now when I walk through a door, my mind automatically triggers those 3 words, and I remember to be those 3 words. So what words would you love to have describe you as a person? That you would be happy if that was how people described you? What would those words be? Have those and now set them up in your life. I teach executives to do this as well. I have them have a door frame trigger when they walk into their office in the morning. As soon as they walk through that door frame, they have, boom, 3 words go through their mind about how they want to be perceived as a leader. I have them set up another door frame. Every time they walk into a meeting, into the conference room, when they walk through the doors of the conference room, they have another 3 words that trigger off for them. And it just reminds them how to be. So these aren't big, crazy things. A lot of people think they have to completely change their life. What would change your life completely is setting up more trigger moments and associations that when you see something, you do this. That when this action is taken, then that happens. that when you have the opportunity to set up alarms on your phone, you set them up so that you're interrupted in your everyday life to remind yourself to stick to the habits, to stick to the intention. You do that enough on a continual basis, you'll find yourself in so many ways completely rejuvenated, and I promise you'll stick to your habits even more. And once you do that, you know that everything changes.
You have to be all in, and it's the hardest thing to do because if it fails, then you can feel like a failure. I think of this idea of performance necessity. Two stories kind of come to mind. One is I was working with an Olympic gold medalist sprinter, and we're in the tunnel, and we're going out, and he's talking about the competition, and we get out to the blocks, and I said, he was really worried about the competition. I said, well, how do you even gauge, like, who's going to win? In his particular race, people are winning, but by 1/100th of a second, tenths of seconds. I mean, these are really close sprints. And I said, well, how do you know? I said, who would you even bet on? And he says, I would bet on the guy who gets down at the blocks, gets himself settled, looks at the finish line, then says, I got to do this for my mom. And I was like, ooh, that's good. His performance necessity in that is, it's necessary for him to win that race for his mom. I think of, when I started my career and I really decided to go all in with writing and online training. This is like 2006. I'd gone broke, completely bankrupt, and failed. I left my corporate job. I had this cushy kind of corporate job as a consultant. Good job. Left it to write. And I didn't know how to make it as a writer. I wanted to do seminars, workshops, didn't know how to do that. So I was pretty much a hot mess, ran out of money. I got nothing to my name, nothing, no positive prospects. No one's calling me except the guys who want the money. And one night I'm writing, and the apartment was so small, on the bed I had all, my bills, my vision boards, all my research, all my journals. Like, the bed was basically the desk, the extended desk. And my lady comes in, Denise, and she walks past me, but she sees I'm like trying to write. So she doesn't want to disturb me. She crawls under the covers of the bed, and I'm just typing, casually typing away. And I look over, and I see my woman sleeping under my bills. Wow. And it was just like, because none of us want to see our family suffer because we are not performing.
Sure.
And I was just like, I gotta figure this out. And I'm telling you, I wrote more that night than any night in my entire life. Next day I wrote more than ever. That birthed Life's Golden Ticket, which became a bestseller. And in 18 months later, because I was like, I'm gonna figure out this online thing, I'm gonna figure out marketing, I'm gonna figure out how to teach, I'm gonna figure out how to train and get paid for it, because I'd never really been paid for those things. I said, I'm gonna figure out this industry, and I'm gonna make it. 18 months later, after her crawling under the bills, I made $4.6 million
Jesus.
online. Total transformation. People are like, how did you do it? I'm like, she was my necessity. I was not going to let my woman be in that situation. And she believed in me, she supported me, she married me. And, but she was my drive. And the second part was, I went all in with my identity. I said, I am going to be a great writer, and I am going to be one of the greatest online trainers there ever was. As you said in the intro now, we've graduated over 2 million people have taken our online courses and video series now. I don't think it would have happened if I hadn't had the guts and maybe no other choice to say, this is who I'm going to be, and I'm going to build into that. And it is necessary for me to become that person, so let's go.
The first way you should not compare yourself to others is in terms of, especially today, their fans, their fame, their followership, right? Their audience. Never do that. in my industry, that's very, very popular to do, and it's ruined a lot of people's lives who don't ever rise up to serve because they think they're not popular enough. You know, it's like you write your first book and you don't have as many sales as other people, and you think, oh, well, I don't have the audience. Or you go to someone's fan page and you see, oh my gosh, look at their followership. Look at how many Instagram followers they have, how many Twitter followers they have. And because you see them so big, you think, oh, I could never be that, so you don't even begin. And a lot of people do that. They say, well, I'm not that big, so they never start. But as I always say, you know what, no matter how small you start something that matters. Begin it. If I began my career looking at my heroes, looking at a Wayne Dyer or a Tony Robbins or a Marianne Williamson, a Deepak Chopra, a Jim Rohn back in the day, or looking at people like Og Mandino's who'd sold millions of books, or even the famous books that you saw, millions and millions and millions of copies, if I gauged myself to that and thought that was the expectation, I would never begin. So you can't expect to start out with tons of people. Some people say to me all the time, well, Brendon, it's so easy for you because you got millions of people on your email list and you have millions of people on Facebook and tens of millions on YouTube. I say, it doesn't make it any harder for me. I still show up and shoot this video. And the reason I have the followers and the fans and the audience is because I showed up and I started when there was only 1 dude, 10 dudes, 100 dudes, 1,000 dudes watching us. My first seminar that I ever did, we only had 22 people in the room. And now we fill up seminars 9 times a year, often from people from 46 countries around the world, fly in, paying thousands of dollars a ticket. And what did I do? I started with 22 people in a room, and most of those people didn't even pay. And every time the guy walked in with water, I counted him as one of those 22. You know, like I had no followership. It's never about how big you start. It's that you start, and you get big by staying at it. Because what people do is they put out their first video, they write their first book, they try their first thing online and nobody follows, nobody watches, and they quit. They get disappointed. And where there's disappointment, there was too high of an expectation on achievement versus learning, versus process, versus beginning. What you want to do is never be disappointed. And the way that you're never disappointed is that you understand every single step counts, every single step is learning, every single step gets you going. But if you have the aspiration or the attention that's only focused on their followership and meeting that, you'll never begin. Don't compare your followership to anybody else's. Instead, just compare your work ethic. Be there, show up, work, get it done. The second thing I don't want you to compare yourself to is other people's achievements. That means their wealth, their sales number, their big house, their big car, their whatever else, you know, their fancy clothes, their whatever they got. Don't look at other people's achievements and what they have. Because if you do that, it's also, you think, well, I'm not famous enough, and then you think, well, I'm not lucky enough, blessed enough, rich enough, whatever your excuse becomes. You gotta be very, very, very careful of that. And I know you know that, but lately, have you been looking at other people's stuff and feeling demoralized because of that? Well, they had a silver spoon in their mouth, or they're so lucky. Those types of things stop us from even trying because we feel like the game is unfair. Well, it's not. Most wealthy people, especially all the billionaires I've met, and I've been blessed to meet lots of them and coach a few of them, the mega stars that I get to work with, the Olympians I get to work with, the highest achieving people in the world, it's not luck, and most of them didn't have unbelievable lucky family connections. What they did is they hustled, they worked, they built it, and even if they started a little more abundant than other people, they outlasted their peers who also started out abundant because they gave, they worked, they struggled through, and we got to keep going. The third thing, don't compare yourself ever in terms of looks, appearances, beauty. You know, I know if you're somebody who opens up those fashion magazines or those celebrity gossip magazines, you're always looking, oh, she's cuter than me, oh, he's better looking. And then again, you have the excuse. Soon as you compare yourself to other people, you have the excuse to never begin. You have the reason to be demoralized. I mean, if I looked across YouTube when I started doing my episodes or my videos or iTunes or podcasts, I would have never begun because you got all these people out there, they're amazing. They look so good, they sound so good, and I sucked. I couldn't talk like this before. Now, as you know, all of our videos and every episode I've ever done has been unscripted. No notes, I got nothing. I'm looking right at you, there's nothing in front of me, I just go. And they're all in one single take. Majority of them, I think 99%, are one take. And that came from practice, where for years and years and years, I tried to be able to just speak extemporaneously without using notes, without using a script. I taught myself to do this. And if I'd compared myself to other people who were so polished and looking good and every word was precise, I would have never gotten to where we're at today with literally hundreds of millions of views and from our posts to our videos. It came because I didn't worry about the polish of looking like everybody else. I was just doing my thing. So what should you compare? Why should you be comparing yourself to others? For growth reasons, learning reasons. I mean, the first reason you should always compare yourself to others is for creativity. To get ideas, not to steal and not to compare, but rather to go, oh, how would I do that? In comparing yourself to others, it brings in self-awareness to say, oh, look, this is how I'm distinct. This is how I'm different. This is how I could approach this in a different way. If I didn't research the market, I would never know how I could be different. If I didn't know how I could be different, I could never have a business. You cannot build a business or have a real career or make any major contribution without understanding how you're distinct. Steve Jobs knew that when he built the phone, it was different. And that, thinking differently, is what made him an icon. It's the same for everything that we do. Compare so you know what is out there, so you know how you could bring a new creative edge to it. Second reason to compare is to compare for vision. Because as you get self-awareness and you understand how you're distinct, sometimes you see someone doing something amazing and you're like, wow, I got a bigger vision for myself. When I started seeing people posting videos, back in 2007, I got a bigger vision for myself. I mean, 2007, I saw people posting longer videos online. I thought, wow, I never saw myself doing video, but look at how I'm watching these and I'm relating with these. I got to do some video. And by comparing myself to others, so other people I followed or researched or read their books, and I saw they had a podcast, I'm like, I'm gonna get a podcast. It opened up my vision for the vehicles, the mediums, the ways that I could serve and give, and I want you to do the same. And the last piece, the reason to compare yourself, is for growth. There is an amazing amount of talent in this world. And when you see them, it should inspire you to level up. It inspired me to learn how to do video. It inspired me to learn how to speak extemporaneous. It inspired me to get over my fears of public speaking and step on a stage, and now it's in front of thousands and thousands of people to inspire the world. I never thought I could do that, but seeing other people sometimes achieve the remarkable, you get inspired. If you can look at someone who's done something better than you, and it inspires you, that means you have humility, and you got a chance. If you look at other people who've achieved more, have more, look more, feel good, or are more amazing than you, and you get bitter or upset, that means you're small and you're destined to smallness. But if you can look at greatness and be inspired, you're on track. You're gonna live an extraordinary quality of life, the kind of life that we call the charged life.
In our lives, especially when we're being reactive, information comes in, right? We're at an event, we're paying attention to how people treat us, we're studying something, we're trying to learn something, and we're just going about our regular day. Information is coming in. How people perceive us, the cause and effect of events, things are just happening. Information comes into the brain. From that point, the information immediately goes into interpretation. And what this usually means is interpretation in the fast reactive thing is safe, unsafe, good, bad, like it, don't like it, recognize it, don't recognize it. Been there, done that, unfamiliar, familiar, certain, uncertain, fear, safe, all these things start triggering. It's pretty unconscious and it's pretty fast. Our biases come into play. It's just that speed, spontaneous, reactive part of us. And that's not always bad. Sometimes it can be good, right? Sometimes it can be good. Interpretation can be, that event, that's good for me. Or that event, that's bad for me. But usually it's like a snap judgment. Think about that. Most when we're talking about an unconscious level, it's like a snap judgment. Automatic. Like you like her or don't like her. Feel safe, don't feel safe. It's very fast. Then the next level, and this is not always linear, of course, because your brain is not left brain, right brain kind of
methodology, your brain's more of a spider web of interconnectiveness that is something we still don't understand, okay? You can study everything in neuroscience and you might learn something about this lobe or that cortex region, but then only to find out that later on, a year later, like, well, actually it seems like it's also communicating over here. It's a spider web of unbelievable intelligence that's happening. And everything can be hundreds of milliseconds of transitions between neural networks. It's unbelievably fast, unbelievably capable. So this is just for our understanding. It's not necessarily real world linear like this, but what tends to happen is as information comes in, good, bad, we also then move it to a level of, well, what does this mean to me? Identity. What does this mean to me? What does this either mean to me or what does this say about me? How does this apply to me? And if we're not conscious here, this can be really troublesome. Some of you discovered that yesterday, I bet, when you released a few things. Sometimes we have these events in our life that we take on and we just assume it meant something about us. And we didn't realize, no, that's more of a statement about them than it is about us, right? Sometimes when you're hurt or someone was rude to you, it had nothing to do with you. Raise your hand if you follow. It had nothing to do with you. But if you're not careful, you could say, mean person, unsafe, means I'm bad child. Rude behavior, uncertain about this, I must not belong. Terrible situation, I feel bad, I can never be safe again. How many follow how this happens? This is why we have to be very, very, very observational of our own thoughts and feelings, because how these things get labeled can really change our lives forever.
Well, imagine like last night, I'm going on the stage, right? If my identity says I am a public speaker and it is important for me to be excellent at this, and then I go on stage and I bomb, what does that say about me as a person? So we've got about 50 years of work in psychology, the field of psychology, saying do not tie your efforts to your identity, because that risk of disappointment or rejection, if the task fails, you shouldn't take that as a defining moment in which you say, I am a failure, right? So that's the risk, and that's what psychologists tell us to be wary of. Except it turns out that high performers flip that on its face and go, well, actually, no, I do get bothered if it fails. I really get upset about it. I am attached to the process here. I do care if it turns out well. I mean, that's why they obsess about the details. That's why they care about excellence. It's like, no one obsesses about the details or cares about excellence unless it means something to them. And there is a risk. The risk is you over-attach to the process or the outcome with your identity, so that if the process or outcome goes bad, now you feel bad about yourself as a human, and now you stop your progress. But I also tell people, there's a balance there. I actually wish more people would attach some identity to what they're doing. They wouldn't go through the motions as much. I mean, I think what the world needs less of is half-interested parents who don't have an identity that says, you know what? I'm gonna be an excellent parent. I think we have a lot of CEOs or business people or entrepreneurs who they've never stepped in and said, you know what? I'm a CEO. I own this business. I am responsible for paying the bills. I am responsible for making the money. I'm responsible for all these people's mortgages who work for me. I want them to own the identity of a CEO, because most of them, if you ask them about their identity and their business, they're kind of like, you come to find, they're kind of approaching it like not even hobbyists. It's like, if you want to win, your identity has to be tied into that thing in which you are trying to succeed at and give to. And that takes a lot of guts to put yourself all in for something, but who's ever contributed something with tremendous impact without being all into it? I've never seen it. So I think the message of the book, you're right, I'll get some flack from people, a lot of psychologists say, don't tell people to tie more of their identity. Or my friends who are Buddhists will say, but attachment is the form of all suffering. Brendon, have you not read your spiritual texts? I'm like, look out, calm down. I've hung out with the Dalai Lama. I'm totally cool. But what I'm trying to tell you is even the Dalai Lama has a connection with himself as a spiritual leader. His identity is still there, that people, assume that, we have to release ourselves from having any attachment to something. But I'm like, I think we all want to be present and engaged fully in the things that we are doing in our lives. And that's going to require us to say psychologically, you know what? I am all in this. That's what I'm about.
It's the habit is generate energy.
Okay.
Not necessarily have energy.
Create energy.
Create energy. And what they do, the way we measure that was kind of academic. Mental energy, which is tied to your focus and your stamina and your ability to manage complex tasks without too much mental stress. Number 2 is emotional energy, which is just the quality of your positive emotions. And number 3 is physical energy. High performers are 40% more likely to work out 5 times per week than the rest of their peers. So that means the top 15% most high-performing people in the world tend to work out 5 days per week. And that workout could be defined as, 45-minute brisk walk or, HIIT intensity or whatever it is, but 40% more likely. That's a huge finding. And what we found is high performers just have better well-being and happiness and physical conditioning than everybody else. One stunning finding was CEOs, senior executives, and business owners, they report expending as much energy as athletes who are competitive now.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. I was surprised by that. I would have thought, athletes would be 10% more.
I mean, the emotional and mental energy
Yeah.
they have to, the decision making, the conversations, the big deals, the stakeness.
Yeah.
It's a lot of energy.
It's a lot. And that's why, if you really want to achieve your dreams, you have to care for your body.
Yeah.
Your mind. That's why all these things, finally resonating in the marketplace because the science of meditation or taking a break or, managing your own energy. Sleep is everything.
Yeah.
And I think all of that is really important. And we say generate energy because there's this myth that, some people have happiness or they have, it's like, no, you generate it. You don't have happiness. You generate it.
Create it, yeah.
You create it. And so the quality of your energy you have to create. Like you and I both, if most of our audience knew our schedules, your schedule the last 5 days, it's like, how is Louis even able to focus right now?
And how are you able to get here and do this as well?
Yeah, but it's because we say, well, this is our mission. Show up, man.
Yeah,
there's plenty of times I got to imagine you walked on the field and you were like, I'm spent.
Exhausted.
I remember when you flew down to compete in South America.
I still play with the USA team handball
Yeah.
team. And a year ago, I flew down to, I remember I did an interview in Miami and then flew out from Miami and then went right into training camp and then played against Brazil, which is Olympic qualifiers and got our asses whooped, but it was fun, But I had to have clarity and energy to show up, even when I was like, oh, we're going to lose.
Yeah.
There's zero chance.
Yeah.
It was like the worst team in the NBA playing the Warriors, and we were just like, we had no chance.
Yeah.
But I had to show up and give my best. And
you have to set all these routines. The amount of routines that Tom Brady has in his life
it's
so that he can generate energy.
It's unbelievable.
Stuns most people.
It's unbelievable.
And that's the
That's
thing.
what it takes if you want to be at that level. If you don't want to be at that level, you don't have to do it.
Yeah, you don't have to do it. Everybody can just I'm going to go, hit the Cinnabon, but it's like,
it's pretty good.
How do you want to feel at 3:00?
Yes.
If you want to feel amazing at 3:00, don't end lunch with a Cinnabon.
One of the major keys we found, the first high-performing habit, is seek clarity. And what we found is one of the practices that high performers do is they define the feeling they're after. And so when we had to explain that and later talk about it in the energy chapter, we had to differentiate between feelings and emotions, and they are different. Emotions tend to be, they're the same.
Yeah.
They're physical, they're almost always automatic, even though in the brain is creating associations, there's also happen. For us, they just kind of,
emotion comes up.
yeah, you're watching a movie and you're just sad and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm crying. You didn't even have the tissues ready. You're just like, blah, but the feelings are usually interpretations that we make of what that emotion was and how it sticks and the meaning we give it to it.
Yeah.
And the example I used to, I like to give, and I don't remember if it's in the book or not, honestly, because here's what's happened. This book is 400 pages. It was 1,481 when I finished.
Baby, you edited down.
Yes, and it was 1,481 good, complete.
Yes.
Like it was like
awesome.
Yes.
But I was like, that's going to freak people out. So we're publishing a bunch in academic journals later and then stripped it down to 400 pages so it's more readable and fun and orientable. So I can't remember if this one actually made it in there, but the example I like to give is if you and I go to a haunted house.
Yeah. Which I love.
I love them. I love them. And they scare me the crap. But if you and I walk around, you walk around one of the walls in a haunted house, someone jumps out at you.
Yeah.
You and I are both going to jump.
Yes.
We are emotionally going to experience fright immediately. It's going to be there, right? But I might be freaked out for the next 5 minutes and you might be laughing. Why? It's the meaning and the feeling that we've defined it as. That's fine for everybody. Here's the issue that people have, and you have to be careful about when we start talking about energy, because emotional energy is real.
Yes.
And that is, look, if at 6, like we go to the haunted house at 5 p.m. in the afternoon. If at 9 p.m. now you're in your house, you're alone, but you're completely safe, and you still feel scared, that's not the haunted house's problem. That is the way that you are defining and working through your own emotions. You had the emotion of terror and fear, and you're still experiencing that feeling. That's a mental job, not an emotional job. So your job is to go, wow, I'm at my house. I've lived here for 10 years. I've never been threatened in this house. This is a safe place. I got to redefine the feeling I want to experience. And I work with an Olympic sprinter, gold medalist, Olympic sprinter, as a client. And this person's huge breakthrough in getting better and going from literally won Olympics before, not medaling at all, to now gold. I said, what was the thing?
Yeah.
And one of the things they said to me was, I learned to define the feeling. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he basically said, if there's a bunch of us at the starting blocks and we're all in perfect poise and perfect condition, the one to bet on is the one that says, this is the way I want to feel in this race right now. I know my emotions are going crazy. Like my heart's beating. I can hear everybody. I'm waiting for that shot blast. I can see my goal. I know how important this is. And all these, their emotions are there.
Yeah.
But that person's defining the feeling going, I'm going to feel centered now. I'm going to get myself in the zone now. Even though the emotion of anxiety is there for all Olympic level competitors, all of them. But they define that emotion as a feeling that helps give them a performance edge. And I think that's important too. Bruce Springsteen says if he's ever backstage and doesn't feel like nerves, he's going to hang it up.
Yeah.
But that's anxiety. He's just defining it differently.
It's so simple. Like when you get that life is really short and you felt that before, either by you were threatened or you've had someone near and dear die, but when you have that real essence in you that says life is short, have reverence for it, live it, that's a really big thing. I got that at 19, and I learned specifically that if we have a moment of cognition before the end of our life, we tend to ask questions to evaluate if we're happy. So if I have any impact in the world, it's going to come from that experience where I learned that the ultimate lesson is determine what the questions you're going to ask at the end of your life are going to be. Find out those questions. What will you ask at the end of your life to evaluate your life so that you would know if you were happy with your life? Like, figure out those questions and then live each day intentionally so you're happy with the answers at the end. For me, the questions I had were, did I live? Which I hadn't. I hadn't been living my life. I'd been thinking about taking my life. Did I love? No, my heart was broken. And I put up all these walls to keep out other people. And I always say, sometimes the walls we put up to keep out the bad guys prevent the good guys from getting in. And suddenly in our own self-protection, we block out the very thing we want, which is connection. And I learned that I would ask, did I matter? 22 years ago, on a dark Caribbean night, I'm standing on the crumpled hood of a car, bleeding out. My friend and I just wrecked a car. He's screaming at the top of his lungs. He's bleeding. We don't know if we're going to live. And I'm standing on the hood of this car, looking down at all this blood, and I'm in terror. And I just remember looking down at the hood and just thinking, did I even matter? And I hated the answer at that time in my life, because I'm a 19-year-old kid. I didn't know about impact theory. For real. I didn't know to think about that. Young kids sometimes, they don't know to think about that. I didn't know to think about legacy, meaning. Did I matter? I didn't think I did. But the good news is, I'm a good learner. And I felt like I got a second chance from God that night. And I learned that it was really important for me to figure out, how do I live, and how do I love, and how do I matter in such a way that if I face my death again, I'll know I've earned the second chance. And so what I want to tell people, and the impact I want, is I just want people to know your questions, man. Live intentionally and earn the life that you've been given, because this moment's a blessing. So earn this moment and live intentionally.
Dude, if you're angry all the time, you gotta change how you look at the world. Yes, there's a lot in the news that can piss you off. Yes, there's a lot going on that causes outrage all day long on Twitter or social media somewhere. But if that's your sole focus, no wonder you're upset all the time. Lots of people are angry right now because of the news or something chaotic or terrible or something they don't agree with is happening in the world. But that's not new. There's always chaos, there's always turmoil, there's always bad things happen in the world. But if that's your focus, no wonder you're having that anxiety and that frustration and that anger all the time. You gotta change both your focus and how you're reacting to things when you do see it. So first, let's work on your focus. As much as you're angry all the time, are you also noticing the beauty of this world? I mean, the odds that you're even alive and having your breath is something to connect to every single morning. To have reverence for your life in the morning, to wake up. One of my late mentors was Wayne Dyer, an amazing, amazing teacher. And he always talked about how he woke up, he rolled over, he put his feet on the ground, and he said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." He was grateful for his day, and he began that way. And I think so many people right now, they kind of roll up in bed and they're like, and they grab their friggin' phone and they start going through the news and social media. And what are they queuing? Immediately, I'm queuing stress, chaos, turmoil, clickables. It's like clickbait, 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 clickbait. No wonder you're frustrated. You're activating your brain immediately right off the beginning of the day in all the turmoil of the world. Put the dang phone down, get up and think about what you're grateful for, about what you want to achieve and give and serve and create that day, about who needs you to be on your A game that day so you can focus on that instead of like this in bed. That will change how you start your day. And then listen, a lot of people who are angry all the time, they're also in outrage all the time because they're focusing on the problem all the time. And they're bemoaning the problem. They're calling out the problem, complaining about the problem, judging, criticizing, getting upset all the time. A ton of people who stay in anger all the time are failing to be solution-based. That's what they're doing, right? They're just anger, problem, outrage, outrage, outrage. But listen, when you become a solution-based person, when you say, okay, I actually want to do something about this problem, and you start taking positive steps to at least address it or to participate, suddenly that anger goes into a new fire, and that fire is called enthusiasm. It is easy to switch anger into enthusiasm when you become solution-based as a mindset. When you say, okay, I don't like this, let me do something. Let me call somebody. Let me take this action. Let me write that letter. Let me send that email. Let me get my friends together. Let's go protest. Let's go get involved. Let's participate, because participation turns anger often into enthusiasm. And so if you're just stewing on the things you don't like, of course it's going to be a negative energy. But if you start stewing on the things that you can do, you find personal power. You find enthusiasm, you find social contribution, ultimately you find community. Because one reason it's so easy to be angry is when you're alone. When you're at home, you're sort of thinking about all the negative things, and you don't have an outlet of other human beings to discuss with, especially solution-oriented people or people with ideas and dreams and ambitions, people who are doing stuff with their life. Because listen, when you're on a path of purpose, you ain't got time for drama. I don't have time for a ton of anger in my life because I'm too busy making positive changes. That's where we want to get you. We want to shift your attention and focus in the morning. We want to start making you more solution-based and get you a community of people around who are ambitious and driven to change and to make positive change happen. When we do that, the anger starts going away. And if you can't get over the anger yourself, then don't be shy about asking for help. A lot of people, they don't have anybody to talk to. So I'm like, get a therapist, man. Get in a group, man. Talk with some people, go to a seminar, get in a new sort of environment. You want to get rid of the anger? Go volunteer. Get around other people who are making positive impacts. That community, that shift changes your life. You don't have to be angry anymore. And the last part about that is letting go. You got to let go of those things that upset you 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. If you're an adult and you're still angry and pissed about things that happened to you in high school, you need a therapist. And I say that with all sincerity and all respect. If you're having mental thoughts that are coming from a place that are literally based 5, 10, 20 years ago that you just didn't deal with yet, you need help dealing with it. And you need to get yourself a meditation practice or a therapist or into some kind of way that you're on a consistent basis letting things go. Here's what I do. Every Sunday, I go, okay, what was I pissed about this last week? What really bothered me? Okay, I gotta let that go. Because you can't keep charging into the next week angry from last week. You gotta let it go. You gotta find a clean slate for yourself so that your soul can expand and can be positive and can be ambitious and motivated and serving the next week. Because listen, anger after anger after anger, hatred after hatred after hatred, criticism after criticism after criticism, rejection after rejection after rejection, outrage after outrage after outrage, it weighs you down. So you've gotta change how much of that you're taking in. And you've got to make sure every single week you're doing some kind of like mental detox to let that stuff go. And instead of cultivating the anger, cultivate the gratitude, cultivate the enthusiasm, and you can change your life.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you're different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. If you want another amazing Brendon Burchard video, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.